When we talk about the idea of pleasure and what men secretly fantasize about, it's easy to assume it's all about the physical. That's the stereotype, right? That men are simple creatures, driven only by what they see and what they feel in the moment. But here's the truth that very few people talk about. The deepest fantasy for a man isn't just about the body, it's about being wanted, being admired, and being truly desired for who he is. This is the kind of validation that doesn't just light him up for a few minutes, it stays with him and makes him feel unstoppable. Think about it. A man can go to the gym, he can put on nice clothes, he can achieve success in his career, but none of that means as much to him as when the person he cares about looks at him in a way that says, "I see you, I admire you, and I want you." That look, that tone, that expression of desire isn't something he can buy, and it isn't something he can fake. It's the moment when he realizes that he is not just filling a role, not just ticking a box, but actually chosen and valued. That's where the real secret pleasure lies. This is why so many men, even the confident ones, carry hidden insecurities. They worry if they're enough, if they're truly impressive, if they are still attractive in the eyes of the woman they love. What men fantasize about more than the physical act itself is the reassurance that comes when a woman communicates, through words, through actions, through energy, that she desires him not just as a partner but as a man. That's not about ego, it's about connection. Because when he feels that, he doesn't just feel turned on, he feels safe, he feels powerful, and he feels alive. You've probably noticed this dynamic before. When a man feels truly admired, his whole demeanor changes. He stands taller, he becomes more playful, more confident, more affectionate. It's not because he suddenly learned a new skill. It's because he feels that spark of validation that tells him he is wanted. And what's fascinating is that men will do almost anything to chase that feeling. They'll work harder, they'll commit deeper, they'll even step up in ways they never thought possible, because the pleasure of being wanted fuels something far bigger than the bedroom. And here's the subtle part: it doesn't take grand gestures to make him feel this way. It's often in the smallest, most genuine moments. The way you touch his arm when you laugh at his joke, the way you whisper something about how he looks tonight, the way you show that little spark in your eye that says, "You're mine." Those micro moments of admiration are more intoxicating to him than any fantasy scene he could dream up. They cut through his doubts, they silence his fears, and they make him feel like he is exactly where he's supposed to be, with you. The irony is that men often don't have the words to express this need. They won't come out and say, "I just want to feel admired and validated." Instead, it shows up in the way they lean into compliments, or the way they light up when you show desire first. Deep down, what they crave is the experience of knowing they don't just give pleasure, but they inspire it. That knowledge is what creates the real pleasure secret men fantasize about. Not the act itself, but the validation that they are worthy of being desired in the first place. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop seeing intimacy as something physical you give and start seeing it as an emotional exchange that men crave just as much as you do. When you make him feel admired, when you show him that he is wanted, you're not just meeting a fantasy, you're creating an energy that will come back to you tenfold. Because the man who feels truly validated in this way doesn't just keep it to himself. He channels it back into you, into the relationship, and into the way he loves. That's the kind of secret that doesn't just stay in the bedroom. It transforms everything. Confidence is one of the most magnetic forces on the planet, and men fantasize about it far more than they admit. It's not about perfection. It's not about looking a certain way. It's about the energy you bring when you know your worth, and you're not afraid to show it. Confidence is the silent language that tells him, without a word, that you are someone who believes in yourself, who doesn't need validation but chooses to give and receive it anyway. That energy is intoxicating, And it's one of the biggest secrets men long for when they imagine being with someone who truly excites them. Picture this: you walk into a room, and without even saying anything, your presence demands attention. Not because you're trying too hard, not because you're showing off, but because you move with a quiet certainty. You're comfortable in your own skin. You laugh fully without hesitation. You make eye contact without shyness, and you speak with a tone that says you know the value of your words. That's the kind of confidence that men dream about being around, because it elevates the entire dynamic. When he feels your certainty, it makes him feel more certain in himself too. The fascinating thing about confidence is that it doesn't compete with him. It complements him. A lot of people think men want someone who will shrink, who will play small to make him feel bigger, but the opposite is true. What he really fantasizes about is someone whose self-assuredness inspires him, challenges him, and makes him step into his best self. Confidence is contagious. When you radiate it, you give him permission to rise with you. That's why the secret fantasy isn't about submissive perfection. It's about the electric energy that comes when someone stands fully in their own power. And here's the beauty of it: confidence isn't about never doubting yourself. It's about how you carry yourself despite those doubts. It's about smiling when you feel nervous. It's about speaking up even when your voice shakes. It's about showing your authentic self without apology. Men fantasize about that kind of real confidence because it creates safety and excitement at the same time. It tells him that you don't need him to complete you, you simply want to share yourself with him. That distinction is everything. Think about the moments when you've been most drawn to someone. It's rarely about flawless looks or perfect timing. It's about the way they made you feel when they walked in. That spark, that undeniable pull, comes from confidence. It's the way someone leans into who they are instead of trying to be someone else. That's exactly what men crave. They want to be around someone who owns their space, who doesn't shrink from desire, who isn't afraid to initiate, to laugh, to take the lead when it feels right. That confidence adds a whole new layer of intensity to intimacy because it changes the story from "I have to impress you" to "we're both bringing something powerful to this moment." When you show confidence, you give him something he can't stop thinking about. The memory of your certainty lingers longer than anything else. He may forget the words you said, but he'll never forget the way you carried yourself, the way you looked at him like you already knew your own value, the way you made him feel like he was in the presence of someone rare. That is the pleasure secret that lives in his mind long after the moment is over. Confidence is not just an attractive quality, it's a fantasy fulfilled. It reassures him that he doesn't have to carry all the weight, that he has a partner who knows their own strength and is unafraid to shine. And ironically, when he experiences that, it doesn't diminish his role, it amplifies it. It makes him want to rise higher, to match that energy, to prove that he is worthy of standing beside someone so assured. This is why confidence is the real turn on, the thing men fantasize about in silence, because it's not just about attraction, it's about the transformation it creates in the entire connection. There's something deeply wired into men that often goes unnoticed, and yet it shapes so many of their hidden desires. Beneath the surface, men fantasize about being admired for their masculinity, not just in a physical sense, but in the way they show up, in the energy they bring, and in the role they play in someone's life. It's not about outdated ideas of dominance or superiority. It's about feeling seen and valued for the unique strength they bring, whether that's emotional, physical, or protective. When a man feels that his masculinity is admired, it taps into a core part of his identity that fuels his confidence, his passion, and his commitment. Men don't often talk about this openly, but they crave the kind of appreciation that makes them feel like their efforts matter. Maybe he fixes something around the house. Maybe he takes initiative in planning. Maybe he works hard to provide. Or maybe it's just the way he makes you feel safe when you're with him. These are the moments where admiration becomes a powerful currency. When you acknowledge those things, even in the smallest ways, it becomes a secret pleasure for him, because it reassures him that the parts of himself he takes pride in are not going unnoticed. This doesn't mean inflating his ego with empty compliments. Men can sense when praise is hollow and it doesn't land the same way. What they fantasize about is genuine recognition. It's the spark in your eyes when he carries something heavy for you without hesitation. It's the playful way you touch his arm and tell him he looks strong. It's the gratitude in your voice when he shows up for you in a way that makes you feel protected. Those simple acknowledgements, when they're real, have a far greater impact than dramatic declarations. They're quiet reminders that his masculinity isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. What's fascinating is how admiration shapes a man's behavior. When he feels admired, he leans further into his strengths. He wants to do more, to give more, to be more. It's almost like admiration flips a switch in him, unlocking a version of himself that is braver, more generous, and more devoted. And the more he feels this, the deeper his desire becomes for the person who gives it to him. Because for men, admiration isn't just validation, it's a form of intimacy. It tells him he's not just a partner, but a man you deeply respect and desire. And let's be honest, men fear irrelevance. They worry about being replaceable, about not being enough, about losing their edge. Admiring his masculinity counters those fears in a way nothing else can. It tells him, I see you, I value you, and you are exactly the man I want. That's not just flattering, it's grounding. It gives him security in the relationship, and ironically, it makes him even more open to showing vulnerability, because he doesn't feel like he has to constantly prove himself anymore. When you show admiration, you also create an energy loop. He feels powerful because of the way you respond to him, and in turn, he channels that power back into making you feel desired and cherished. This is one of the unspoken secrets of attraction. Admiration breeds admiration. The more you reflect his masculinity back to him with appreciation, the more he reflects your femininity, or simply your presence, back to you with equal intensity. It's a cycle of energy that fuels passion far beyond the physical. So when we talk about the pleasure secrets men fantasize about, admiring his masculinity is at the core. It's not about feeding arrogance, it's about affirming his place, his efforts, and his role in your world. That's the kind of fantasy that runs deep, the kind that makes him replay moments in his mind long after they've passed. When you give him that, you're not just fulfilling a hidden desire, you're unlocking a part of him that will show up for you with more strength, more love, and more commitment than ever before. Playfulness is one of the most underestimated forces in attraction, and yet it's one of the deepest fantasies men carry with them. It's not just about laughter or lightheartedness. It's about the ability to create moments that feel effortless, spontaneous, and alive. When intimacy is wrapped in playfulness, it shifts from being something predictable to something electric. Men fantasize about those moments where tension and fun collide, where teasing turns into desire, and where laughter becomes as intimate as a kiss. That combination doesn't just make things enjoyable, it makes them unforgettable. Think about how relationships often begin. In the early days, everything feels playful. The inside jokes, the teasing texts, the unexpected adventures. These little sparks build a sense of excitement that keeps both people on edge in the best way. Over time, though, routine sets in. Life gets busy, stress piles up, and those playful moments start to fade. But what men crave, and often fantasize about, is the return of that energy. They long for the woman who still makes them laugh, who still teases them, who still knows how to turn an ordinary moment into something charged with fun. That's the pleasure secret hidden behind so many of their desires, the fantasy of playfulness never dying. What makes playfulness so powerful is that it creates unpredictability. Men are constantly bombarded with responsibility, expectations, and pressure to perform. Playfulness cuts through that and brings them into the present. Imagine whispering something cheeky when he least expects it, or playfully pulling him closer in the middle of a routine day, or even challenging him in a way that sparks competition and laughter. These are not grand gestures, but they ignite his imagination because they remind him that intimacy doesn't have to be heavy or scripted. It can be joyful, silly, and free. Playfulness also unlocks a deeper level of connection because it lowers defenses. When you're playful, you're showing him that you're comfortable, that you're not taking everything too seriously, and that you want to share joy as much as desire. For men, this creates a powerful sense of relief. It tells him he doesn't always have to be in control, he doesn't always have to impress, he can just be himself and enjoy the moment with you. That's liberating, and it's a kind of freedom men don't always find easily in the world outside of their relationship. Another layer to this is how playfulness blends with intimacy. Men fantasize about moments where laughter leads directly into closeness, where teasing words suddenly turn into a kiss, or a playful challenge ends with both people completely lost in each other. That transition from fun to passion is intoxicating because it mirrors real life. It's messy, it's unexpected, and it's human. Those are the memories that stick. A laugh shared in the middle of passion, a teasing word whispered at just the right time. Those are the things men replay long after the moment is over. And here's the secret most people overlook: playfulness isn't childish, it's confident. It takes confidence to be playful, to risk being silly, to show your quirky side without worrying about how it looks. That's why it's so attractive. Men don't fantasize about someone who's perfect all the time. They fantasize about someone who makes them feel light, who reminds them that connection isn't supposed to be work, it's supposed to be joy. That joy becomes the backdrop against which deeper intimacy is built. So when we peel back the layers of what men truly want, playfulness sits right there alongside admiration and confidence. It's not an accessory, it's essential. It keeps the spark alive. It makes intimacy exciting, and it builds a bond that feels unbreakable. Men fantasize about being with someone who can laugh with them in the middle of chaos, who can turn a serious day into something fun, and who can bring that same spirit into moments of desire. That's not just a secret of pleasure, it's a secret of lasting passion. Vulnerability is one of those things that people often misunderstand. Many think of it as weakness, as exposing too much, as giving away power. But in reality, vulnerability is one of the greatest strengths you can bring into a connection. And it's something men secretly fantasize about more than they would ever say out loud. Beneath the surface, men long for moments when the person they're with allows the walls to come down, when the mask drops, and when there is no performance, just raw, unfiltered truth. That is where intimacy stops being physical and starts becoming unforgettable. Men carry a lot of weight in silence. They're taught to be strong, to provide, to protect, to avoid showing cracks. And because of that, many men rarely experience true vulnerability even within themselves. So when they're with someone who allows vulnerability, who shows that it's safe to let go, to be imperfect, to feel deeply, it becomes one of the most powerful experiences of their lives. It tells them, you don't have to be perfect here. You don't have to pretend. You can just be. That is a secret fantasy men rarely voice, but one that shapes their deepest desires. Think about the times when you've opened up about something real. Your fears, your dreams, your insecurities. Those are the moments that often stay burned into memory, not because they were polished or glamorous, but because they were real. Men fantasize about that kind of openness, about the trust it represents. It reassures them that they're not just being wanted for what they provide or how they perform, but for who they are. And when they feel that, they often find the courage to be vulnerable in return, creating a bond that runs deeper than anything surface-level attraction could ever offer. Vulnerability also creates contrast, and contrast is what makes intimacy powerful. Imagine someone who is confident, playful, and radiant most of the time, but then in a quiet moment lets their guard down and shares something tender, something raw. That shift creates intensity. It shows dimension. It allows him to see not just the strong, confident side, but also the human, fragile side, and that combination is irresistible. Men don't fantasize about being with someone who is untouchable. They fantasize about being trusted enough to witness both strength and softness. That's what makes them feel chosen in the deepest way. There's also an intimacy in vulnerability that goes beyond words. It can be in the way you reach for him without hesitation, the way your voice softens when you share something personal, the way you let emotion show on your face instead of hiding it. These little cues tell him he's in a space no one else gets to enter. That exclusivity, the sense that he gets to see the part of you no one else does, is a fantasy more powerful than any physical scenario he could imagine. It's the secret desire to be the one person trusted enough to witness your truth. And what's remarkable is that vulnerability often brings out the best in men. When they feel your openness, they're inspired to match it. Suddenly, the man who always kept his guard up begins to talk about his fears, his past, his hopes. Suddenly, the man who seemed invincible admits that he too needs reassurance sometimes. That's the alchemy of vulnerability. It transforms two individuals into a true partnership where strength and fragility exist side by side. So when we talk about the pleasure secret men fantasize about, vulnerability is one of the deepest. It's not about breaking down, it's about breaking open. It's about saying, here I am, not perfect, not guarded, but real. And for a man, being invited into that space is a privilege he holds close, because it's rare, it's sacred, and it's unforgettable. Vulnerability doesn't weaken attraction, it amplifies it because it turns passion into connection, and connection into something that lasts far beyond a single moment. At the heart of every man's desire lies a fantasy that runs deeper than any physical act or fleeting passion. It is the fantasy of being chosen. Not just liked, not just tolerated, not even just loved, but chosen deliberately over every other option in the world. Men rarely say this out loud, but the truth is they carry the same insecurities everyone does. They wonder if they measure up, if they're really the one you want, or if they're simply convenient for now. What ignites them in the deepest way is knowing that among all the possibilities, you looked at them and said, it's you. You're the one I want. That knowledge is intoxicating, and it's the pleasure secret that sits quietly at the center of so many of their fantasies. Being chosen is different from being needed. Need comes from dependency, from filling a gap. Choice, on the other hand, comes from abundance. It's knowing you could have anyone, yet still choosing him. That distinction is what electrifies him, because in that choice lies affirmation. He is enough, he is worthy, he is the one who stood out. And when a man feels that level of exclusivity, it creates a kind of security that nothing else can touch. He doesn't just feel desired, he feels irreplaceable. Think about how powerful this is in practice. It's in the moments when you make him feel like no one else could take his place. It's the way you speak about him when he's not in the room. The way you remember the smallest details about him, the way you celebrate what makes him different from everyone else. It's not about comparison, it's about distinction. When you show him that his quirks, his strengths, even his flaws are part of why you choose him, you light up a part of him that no external validation can reach. That's the fantasy, not to be the perfect man, but to be your man. Men often live in a world of silent competition. They see other men who are stronger, wealthier, more successful, and it can make them question their own value. But when they know they've been chosen, those doubts shrink. Suddenly, it's not about how they measure up in general. It's about the fact that, in your eyes, they are already enough. That kind of reassurance doesn't just make them feel loved, it makes them feel powerful. It gives them the confidence to step into their role fully, to commit without hesitation, to pour themselves into the relationship because they know they're standing on solid ground. And this fantasy of being chosen isn't just about words, it's about consistency. It's in how you show up, in how you make time, in how you treat him differently than you treat anyone else. Men fantasize about that private world where they know they are your priority, not because you don't have other options, but because none of them compare. That's where intimacy deepens. That's where passion lasts. That's where he feels not just wanted, but anchored. What's beautiful about this is how it transforms him. When a man feels truly chosen, he doesn't just sit back and relax. He rises to the occasion. He works harder to be worthy of that choice every single day. He invests more. He loves deeper. He shows up stronger. Because to him, being chosen is not a one-time thrill. It's a responsibility and honor, something he never wants to lose. So when we talk about the pleasure secret men fantasize about, this is the one that ties everything together. More than validation, more than admiration, more than playfulness or vulnerability, it's the knowledge that out of everyone, you still choose him. That's what makes him feel alive. That's what keeps his desire burning. That's what turns a relationship from something ordinary into something extraordinary. And when he feels that, it becomes the fantasy he never wants to wake up from.